Luca had been having one of those rare, reckless moments of confidence. Not explicit, he wasn't insane, but intimate enough, soft lighting, bare collarbone. That look in his eyes he usually only saw reflected back at him when he wasn't pretending to be smaller than he was. It was meant to be funny, flirtatious. A joke for Milo, who had dared him earlier with a "prove you're hot" coward text. He had meant to send it to Milo, beta, disaster, unemployed. Instead, the contact name at the top of the screen read, Alessandro Moretti. Luca's brain had not processed that at first. It took exactly 3 seconds after he hit send for reality to kick the door down. The status changed, delivered. The room went very, very quiet. "Oh no," Luca whispered. His phone vibrated once. Then again. His heart dropped into his stomach, then continued sinking, presumably into hell. Because Alessandro Moretti was not just some alpha, he was that alpha, billionaire CEO, public philanthropist, private criminal myth, the kind of man whose name made alphas straighten their backs and omegas lower their gaze without even realizing why. The kind of alpha whose presence on the news made Luca change channels because something about those cold, dark eyes made his instincts curl up and hiss. And Luca had just sent him a photo that absolutely did not belong in a professional business inbox. "I'm going to die," Luca said faintly. The phone buzzed again. A message. Luca squeezed his eyes shut, inhaled sharply, then cracked one eye open like he was defusing a bomb. "Alessandro Moretti, you have 30 seconds to explain why an omega just disrupted my meeting." Luca made a noise that could only be described as a strangled squeak. Meeting. Oh gods. Of course the alpha was in a meeting, probably with other dangerous people. Probably discussing money, weapons, power, or all three. And Luca's stupid face had popped up on a massive screen somewhere like a cursed slideshow. "I should fake my death," Luca muttered, hands shaking as he typed. He deleted the first message, and the second, and the third, finally. "Luca, I am so sorry, that was not meant for you. Please ignore it. I will disappear forever." The 3 dots appeared immediately. Luca's scent spiked with panic, sharp and citrusy, filling the room. He scrambled for his scent suppressor spray, fumbling it off the table, watching it roll under the couch. "Of course," he whispered. "Why wouldn't everything be terrible?" Another message came through. "Alessandro Moretti. Ignoring it would be rude." Luca stared. Another message followed before he could respond. "And you should really lock your contacts better." Luca's face burned. "Why is he texting like this?" he whispered. "Why is he—" His phone buzzed again. "You have excellent lighting, and terrible aim." Luca screamed. He buried his face in a pillow, muffling the sound, his heart racing so hard he could feel it in his throat. When he resurfaced, gasping, the phone was still there. Waiting, patient, predatory. "Nope," Luca said aloud. "No, absolutely not." He blocked the number. The relief lasted exactly half a second. Then his phone started ringing. Blocked calls did not ring. Luca stared at the screen in horror as unknown caller flashed repeatedly, the vibration rattling the cheap table it sat on. He answered on the third ring, voice shaking. I blocked you." "Yes," Alessandro Moretti said calmly on the other end. His voice was deep, smooth, controlled in a way that made Luca's instincts sit up despite himself. "I noticed. You're not supposed to be able to call," Luca blurted. A pause. Then faint amusement. "There are many things I'm not supposed to be able to do." Luca swallowed hard. "I didn't mean to send that," he said quickly. "I swear. Please don't blacklist me or sue me or—" "I'm not angry," Alessandro interrupted. "That was worse." Luca leaned against the counter, legs weak. "Then why are you calling me?" Another pause, longer this time. "Because," the alpha said quietly, "you're shaking." Luca froze. "How would you—" "I can hear it in your breathing," Alessandro replied. "And because omegas don't send messages like that by accident, unless they're under pressure." Luca hated that his throat tightened. "I'm fine," he lied. Alessandro hummed, unconvinced. "You blocked me instead of apologizing properly. That suggests fear." "I just accidentally flirted with a mafia boss," Luca snapped. "Fear feels reasonable," a soft exhale, almost a laugh. "You're brave," Alessandro said. "Or reckless. Mostly broke," Luca muttered. That earned him a silence so heavy it made his skin prickle. "Tell me your name," Alessandro said. Luca hesitated. His instinct screamed, "Don't." But something in Alessandro's voice wasn't commanding. It was curious. "Luca," he said finally. "Luca Vale." The Alpha repeated it slowly, like tasting it. Luca, Alessandro said. You didn't ruin your life tonight. I really feel like I did. No, the Alpha replied. You disrupted it. Luca frowned. That's not comforting. It's not meant to be, Alessandro said. I don't ignore disruptions. The line went quiet for a beat, then... I think, Alessandro continued, voice lowering just slightly, we should talk in person. Luca's heart skipped. Why? Because, the Alpha said simply, you've caught my attention. The call ended. Luca slid down the counter until he was sitting on the floor, staring at the blank screen. Well, he whispered to the empty room, that's going to be a problem. Luca did not sleep. This was not unusual. Sleep had been optional ever since adulthood and capitalism had teamed up against him, but tonight it was aggressively impossible. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw three things in perfect rotation. The word delivered. Alessandro Moretti's name lighting up his phone. The calm, unbothered sound of a MAFIA Alpha telling him, you've caught my attention. At some point around 4 a.m, Luca gave up on sleep entirely and sat up in bed, hair sticking out in all directions, clutching his phone like it might bite him. It's just a guy, he muttered. A rich, dangerous, probably emotionally unavailable Alpha guy with access to private armies. His phone vibrated. Luca screamed. He nearly threw it across the room, then caught it at the last second because the screen lit up with a new message. Alessandro Moretti, you're still awake. Luca stared. How does he checked the time. ITIS 4:30. Another vibration. You didn't deny it. Luca typed furiously. Luca, do you always text Omegas you accidentally traumatize? The response came instantly. Only the interesting ones. Luca groaned and dropped face first into his pillow. This was not flirting. This was psychological warfare. He rolled onto his back and typed, Luca, I'm not interesting. I'm just broke and bad at phones. A pause. Longer this time. Then, broke is fixable. Bad aim is charming. Luca stared at the ceiling, heart doing something deeply unhelpful. Why are you like this? He whispered. He hesitated, then typed before he could overthink it. Luca, why are you like this? The dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. When the message finally came, it was slower, more deliberate, because you didn't beg, you didn't flirt on purpose, and you didn't smell like entitlement, even through a screen. Luca blinked. Did he just compliment my scent through Wi-Fi? He murmured. He sat up, spine stiffening as reality caught up. Luca, you know I'm an Omega. Of course I do. Luca's fingers paused over the keyboard. That's why this is dangerous, he almost typed. Instead, Luca, then you should probably stop. Another pause, long enough for Luca's instincts to start buzzing. That soft warning hum in the back of his mind that usually preceded bad decisions. I should, Alessandro replied. But I won't. Luca swallowed. He hated how steady the Alpha was. No push. No threat. Just certainty. Luca, you called me. You said we should talk in person. Was that a joke? The reply came immediately this time. No. Luca exhaled shakily. Luca, I don't meet powerful Alphas alone. You shouldn't, Alessandro agreed. Which is why we'll meet in public. That surprised him. Luca, you're serious. Painfully. Luca stared at the message, then at his cracked ceiling. Meeting Alessandro Moretti was a terrible idea, which meant, unfortunately, that he was already considering it. The cafe was too nice for him. Luca knew this immediately upon stepping inside and being hit with the smell of expensive coffee, polished wood, and money. The kind of place where Alphas in tailored coats discussed investments in low voices and Omegas wore neutral colors and looked effortlessly composed. Luca wore his favorite oversized hoodie, ripped jeans, and anxiety. He chose a table near the window, visible, public, safe, and sat with his back to the wall like a cornered animal. His scent suppressor was working overtime, but nerves leaked anyway, citrus and static humming just under the surface. He checked the time. 5 minutes early. Of course he was early. You're not running, he told himself. You're just evaluating. The door opened. The room changed. It wasn't dramatic, no music shift, no collective gasp, but Luca felt it in his bones, that instinctive Omega awareness that snapped to attention when a dominant Alpha entered the space. Alessandro Moretti walked in like he owned the air. Black coat. No visible weapons. dark hair neatly styled, eyes sharp and unreadable as they scanned the room. He didn't rush, didn't hesitate. His presence was quiet, controlled, dangerous in the way of someone who never needed to raise his voice. His gaze landed on Luca, and stayed. Luca's breath hitched. "Oh no," he whispered. "He's hotter in real life." Alessandro crossed the cafe, every step unhurried, and stopped in front of Luca's table. For a terrifying second, Luca forgot how to speak. "Luca Vale," Alessandro said. Hearing his name out loud, that voice, that Alpha, sent a shiver straight down Luca's spine. "You're taller than I expected," Luca blurted. Alessandro's eyebrow twitched. "You're smaller." Rude. Amusement flickered in the Alpha's eyes. "May I?" Alessandro gestured to the chair. Luca nodded quickly. "Yes, please, sit. Before I pass out." Alessandro sat. Up close, he smelled like smoke and espresso and something darker beneath. Authority, maybe. Luca's instincts leaned forward traitorously. "I'm not in trouble, right?" Luca asked, gripping his cup. "No," Alessandro said calmly. "If you were, this wouldn't be a cafe. That's not reassuring." Alessandro smiled faintly. "Good." Luca blinked. "You're enjoying this." "I enjoy honesty," Alessandro corrected. "And chaos." "You're both," Luca scoffed. "I sent one picture." "You disrupted my meeting," Alessandro said. 3 executives lost their train of thought. Luca winced. "Sorry, I'm not," Alessandro replied. It was enlightening. They studied each other for a moment, Omega and Alpha, tension threading the air between them like a live wire. Finally, Luca cleared his throat. "So," he said, "what happens now?" Alessandro leaned back, folding his hands. "Now," he said softly, "we decide whether this was an accident." Luca's heart thudded. Or an invitation," Alessandro finished. Luca's instinct screamed danger. His curiosity whispered interesting. And that was when Luca realized. This was no longer about a mistaken message. This was about choice. Luca learned something important about Alessandro Moretti within the first 5 minutes of their conversation. The man did not bluff. He didn't posture, didn't crowd Luca's space, didn't flash his wealth or dominance like a threat. He just sat there, relaxed and immaculately composed, like he already knew how every possible outcome would play out, and had chosen to enjoy this one, which was, frankly, terrifying. "So," Luca said, breaking the silence before it crushed him, "you said we were deciding whether this was an accident." "Yes," Alessandro replied smoothly. "And if I say it was?" Luca asked. Alessandro's gaze flicked briefly to Luca's hands, where his fingers were wrapped tight around his coffee cup. Then back to his face. "Then I apologize," Alessandro said, "and we finish our drinks like civilized adults." Luca blinked. That's it? That was suspiciously reasonable, and if I say it wasn't?" Alessandro didn't answer right away. He leaned back slightly, posture still relaxed, but something sharpened in the air between them. Not pressure. Focus. "Then," Alessandro said quietly, "we talk about why." Luca swallowed. "You're very calm about this," Luca muttered. "I prefer clarity to chaos," Alessandro replied. "But I tolerate chaos when it's interesting." "Wow," Luca said flatly. "I feel so honored." A corner of Alessandro's mouth lifted. "You should..." Luca snorted despite himself, then immediately scowled. "You're doing that on purpose." "Doing what?" "Being..." "Like that," Luca waved vaguely. "Alpha-y, charming, rich, those are fixed traits," Alessandro said. "I can apologize for the last one if you like." Luca laughed before he could stop himself. It burst out of him, sharp and surprised, and for a moment the tension cracked. Just a little. Alessandro watched him with something like satisfaction. "Okay," Luca said, regaining control. "Cards on the table. I don't want trouble. I don't want favors. I don't want to owe a MAFIA Alpha anything." "Reasonable," Alessandro agreed. "I sent that picture by accident," Luca continued. "I wasn't fishing. I wasn't offering. I wasn't..." "Selling yourself," Alessandro finished. Luca stiffened. "Yes. I didn't think you were," Alessandro said calmly. Luca frowned. "You didn't?" "No," Alessandro said. "If you were, you would have followed up." "With what?" "Conditions," Alessandro replied. "Expectations. Omegas who intend to trade intimacy know their worth." Luca flushed. "I know my worth, I believe you," Alessandro said. "You just don't charge for it." That landed harder than Luca expected. He looked down at his coffee, suddenly self-conscious. That doesn't mean I don't need money, Luca muttered. I know, Alessandro said. Luca's head snapped up. You don't know anything about me. Alessandro met his gaze evenly. You live in a building with outdated security, he said. Your landlord filed 3 late notices last month. Your heat suppressants are off-brand and inconsistent. And you freelance under a pseudonym because you don't trust contracts. Luca's blood went cold. He swallowed. You looked into me. Yes, Alessandro said simply. That's not okay. You're sitting across from a MAFIA Alpha, Alessandro replied. It would be irresponsible not to. Luca pushed back from the table slightly, instincts flaring. So what? He snapped. This is the part where you threaten me? No, Alessandro said. This is the part where I explain why I asked you here. The cafe door opened again, letting in a gust of cold air. Alessandro didn't look away from Luca. You are vulnerable, he said. Not weak, vulnerable. Luca clenched his jaw. I can take care of myself. I'm sure you can, Alessandro agreed, but you shouldn't have to alone. That's not your decision. No, Alessandro said. It's yours. He reached into his coat, not suddenly, not threatening, and pulled out a slim tablet, setting it on the table between them, without pushing it closer. I'm offering you protection, Alessandro said. Legal, financial, physical. Luca stared at the tablet like it might explode. I didn't ask for that. You didn't have to, Alessandro replied. Your circumstances did. Luca let out a shaky laugh. This is insane. You don't even know me. I know enough, Alessandro said. You didn't panic when you realized who I was. You apologized. You blocked me instead of begging. You showed up today despite being terrified. That just means I make bad choices. Alessandro's eyes softened slightly. It means you have agency. Luca hesitated. What's the catch? Alessandro exhaled slowly, as if he'd expected that question all along. There is no ownership, he said. No forced bond, no public claim unless you want it. You keep your work, your friends, your autonomy. Luca stared. Then why? Alessandro's gaze darkened, not threatening but intense. Because, he said, someone will notice you eventually. And they won't be as patient as I am. Luca's stomach dropped. Is that a threat? It's a warning, Alessandro replied. The world I live in doesn't leave unattended valuables alone. I'm not a thing, Luca snapped. No, Alessandro agreed instantly. You're a person. He leaned forward slightly, voice lowering. And you deserve to choose who stands between you and danger. Silence fell between them again. Thick, heavy, alive. Luca's instincts were screaming now, not in fear but in something far worse. Recognition. You want to be my sugar daddy, Luca said suddenly. Alessandro blinked once, then he laughed. A real laugh. Low, brief, surprised. That is a remarkably blunt way to put it, he said. I'm serious, Luca said. This is an arrangement. Money, protection, boundaries. Yes, Alessandro said. With consent and feelings? Luca asked warily. Alessandro's smile faded. Optional, he said, but not guaranteed absent. Luca blew out a breath, running a hand through his hair. This is a bad idea. I agree, Alessandro said, entirely. Luca looked at him. Then why are you offering? Alessandro held his gaze, voice steady. Because you walked into my life by accident, he said. And I don't let accidents go to waste. Luca leaned back in his chair, heart pounding. Well, he said weakly. That's the most mafia thing you've said so far. Alessandro smiled again. Slow, sharp, unmistakably dangerous. We're just getting started. Luca had always believed contracts were traps. Not the dramatic kind, no blood signatures or ominous music, but the quiet ones. The ones written in polite language that hid sharp edges underneath. The ones that promised stability and delivered obligation. So when Alessandro slid the tablet closer this time, Luca did not touch it. I don't sign things I don't understand, Luca said. Alessandro nodded. Good, that wasn't permission. It wasn't meant to be, Alessandro replied. It was approval. Luca shot him a look. You really enjoy being infuriating. I enjoy competence, Alessandro said. You have it, Luca scoffed, but his heart wasn't fully in it. His instincts were still humming, a low, constant buzz beneath his skin. Not fear, awareness. Like standing too close to a live wire and knowing it could burn you, but also light up an entire city. What happens if I say no? Luca asked. Alessandro didn't hesitate. Then I walk you home. Safely. And we part ways. That's it? That's it. Luca studied his face, searching for cracks. There were none. Alessandro Moretti didn't look like a man who begged or chased or forced outcomes. That somehow made it worse. Okay, Luca said slowly. I'll read it. He pulled the tablet toward him. The contract was not what he expected. There was no ownership clause, no bonding requirement, no language that reduced him to a commodity. In fact, the word Omega barely appeared at all. Instead, it talked about support, protection, mutual consent, clear exit terms, confidentiality that ran both ways. Luca frowned, scrolling. This is too clean, he muttered. Alessandro watched him closely. Too clean. You're a MAFIA Alpha, Luca said. Where's the catch? Alessandro leaned back. Page 9. Luca flipped. There it was. A clause about exclusivity, not sexual, but proximity. Luca would inform Alessandro before traveling, before taking high-risk work, before attending events with unknown Alpha. You want to know where I am, Luca said quietly. Yes, Alessandro replied. So I can keep you safe. And if I don't tell you? Alessandro's gaze sharpened, not threatening but unmistakably serious. Then the contract dissolves, he said. Immediately. Luca looked up. No punishment? No, Alessandro said. I don't keep people who don't want to be kept. Something in Luca's chest twisted at that. You don't even want control, Luca murmured. You want awareness. I want trust, Alessandro corrected. Luca swallowed. He scrolled further. Monthly stipend. Ridiculous amount. Housing assistance. Medical coverage, including heat management with choice-based protocols that made Luca's ears burn just reading them. You put a lot of thought into this, Luca said. I don't do impulsive deals, Alessandro replied. Luca raised an eyebrow. You called me because I sent you a picture. Alessandro's lips curved faintly. I said I don't do impulsive deals. I didn't say I don't notice opportunity. Luca huffed a laugh despite himself. Okay, he said finally. I have conditions. Alessandro's eyes lit, not predatory but intent. Good, he said. Tell me. No tracking devices, Luca said immediately. No surprise visits, no bodyguards following me into bathrooms or hovering like I'm made of glass. Agreed, Alessandro said without pause. No telling me what to wear, no telling me who I can talk to. Agreed. And, Luca hesitated, then pushed on. No touching without permission. Ever. Alessandro's expression shifted, just a fraction, but his answer was immediate. Agreed. Silence settled between them again. Luca stared at the final page, stylus hovering over the signature line. This is the dumbest thing I've ever considered, he muttered. Yes, Alessandro said calmly. It is. Luca looked at him. You're not even pretending otherwise. I don't lie to people I want to keep, Alessandro replied. That did it. Luca signed. The tablet chimed softly. Contract finalized. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Alessandro stood. Come, he said. Luca blinked. Come where? Home, Alessandro replied. Luca's heart slammed against his ribs. I didn't agree to move in with you. No, Alessandro said. You agreed to be protected. That apartment is no longer adequate. I like my apartment, Luca protested weakly. It has one exit, broken cameras, and a landlord who sells tenant information, Alessandro said. You don't. Luca opened his mouth to argue, and stopped. You already checked, he said. Yes, of course you did. Alessandro held out his coat. You don't have to stay permanently, just tonight. Luca hesitated. Every instinct screamed change, danger, unknown. But another, quieter instinct whispered something worse. Safe. Fine, Luca said. But I'm not sharing a bed. Alessandro paused, then nodded. Of course, that was the first rule Luca broke. The penthouse was absurd. Glass walls. City lights spilling in like a constellation at their feet. Everything quiet, secure, controlled. Luca felt like he'd stepped into another world, one where nothing creaked, nothing leaked, nothing threatened to fall apart overnight. This place could house a small nation, Luca muttered. It's efficient, Alessandro replied. Luca kicked off his shoes, immediately uncomfortable. I feel like I'm going to smudge something important. You are the most important thing here, Alessandro said, then froze. So did Luca. They stared at each other. That came out wrong, Alessandro said. No, Luca said softly. It didn't. Awkwardness settled. Thick, unfamiliar. I'll show you the guest room, Alessandro said quickly. The room was bigger than Luca's entire apartment. He stood in the doorway, stunned. I could get lost in here, Luca said. I would find you, Alessandro replied automatically. Another pause. You really don't hear yourself sometimes, Luca said. Alessandro rubbed the back of his neck. I'm learning. Luca set his bag down, heart racing for reasons that had nothing to do with fear. Later, much later, Luca lay awake in the massive bed, staring at the ceiling. He could smell Alessandro faintly through the walls. Smoke, coffee, Alpha. He hadn't been touched, hadn't been claimed, hadn't been cornered. And somehow, that made everything feel far more dangerous. In the dark, his phone buzzed. A message. Alessandro, if you need anything, knock. Luca typed back before he could think. Luca, this doesn't mean I trust you. A pause. Then, I know. It means you chose me. Luca turned onto his side, pulse pounding. I'm in trouble, he whispered to the empty room. And for the first time, the thought didn't scare him. Luca realized something was wrong when the doorman bowed, not nodded, not smiled politely. Bowed. Luca froze just inside the lobby of Alessandro's building, one foot still hovering awkwardly in the air. Is he bowing at me? Luca whispered. Yes, came a calm voice at his side. Luca flinched. You can't just appear like that. Alessandro adjusted his cufflinks, unbothered. You were distracted. I was being respected, Luca hissed. I don't like it. The doorman straightened, eyes carefully neutral now, but Luca could still feel the shift, how people's gazes slid toward him and then away again. Like he was marked. Not claimed exactly, but noticed. Protected. Tell him not to do that, Luca said. I didn't tell him to, Alessandro replied. He inferred. That's worse. They stepped outside into the morning air. A black car waited at the curb, engine running. Luca stopped walking. No, Alessandro paused. No? I said no bodyguards hovering, Luca said. And that, he pointed accusingly at the car, is hovering with wheels. That's a car, Alessandro said mildly. That's a mafia car. It's a sedan. Luca turned to him, incredulous. Do you hear yourself? Alessandro studied Luca for a moment, then nodded once. Walk with me, he said. They walked like normal people. Well, normal-ish. Alessandro's presence still bent the space around them, his attention always half a step ahead, scanning reflections, corners, movement. Luca noticed it now, the way Alessandro subtly positioned himself closer to the street, the way his hand hovered near Luca's back without touching, protective, careful. I don't want to be a trophy, Luca said quietly. Alessandro didn't look at him. You aren't. I don't want people knowing who I'm connected to. They won't, Alessandro said. They'll know who not to touch. That sent a shiver straight down Luca's spine. They walked in silence for a few blocks before Luca spoke again. You didn't tell me this part would feel heavy. Alessandro slowed. Heavy how? Like gravity, Luca said. Like everything around me suddenly has consequences. Alessandro stopped completely. Luca turned to face him, startled. If you want out, Alessandro said carefully, we stop, now. Luca searched his face, really looked at him. There was no anger there, no manipulation, just readiness. I don't, Luca admitted. I just need to complain. A faint smile touched Alessandro's mouth. Noted. The cafe Luca usually worked from was loud, messy, and full of freelancers who smelled like stress and oat milk. Today, it went quiet when Luca walked in. Not dead silent, but aware. Luca felt it immediately. Heads turning, whispers stopping, the subtle shift of space being made for him. Oh no, Luca muttered. I hate this. He slid into his usual seat, opening his laptop like a shield. 5 minutes later, Milo dropped into the chair across from him, eyes wide. What did you do? Milo hissed. I didn't do anything, Luca said. I accidentally did something. Milo leaned in. You smell like money. That's rude. And Alpha, Milo continued. A big one. Luca glared. Keep your voice down. Is it the Mafia one? Milo whispered. Luca closed his eyes. Yes. Milo slapped a hand over his mouth. You're going to die. I'm literally safer than I've ever been. That's how they get you. Before Luca could respond, his phone buzzed. Alessandro, you're being stared at. Luca glanced up. Across the cafe, a stranger had been watching him too intently, not curious. Assessing. Luca's instincts prickled. Luca, I noticed. 3 seconds later, leave. Now. Luca's pulse spiked. Luca, I don't want to overreact. This isn't overreaction. The stranger stood, Luca shoved his laptop into his bag. "Milo," he said quietly. "We're leaving. Why, now?" They were halfway to the door when a presence cut them off. "Luca Vale," the man said, smiling thinly. "We haven't met." Luca's scent spiked despite the suppressors. "I'm busy," Luca said flatly. The man's gaze flicked over him, calculating. "You shouldn't walk alone," the man said. "People might get ideas." The cafe door opened. The temperature dropped. Alessandro Moretti stepped inside. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't touch the man. He simply said, "Step away from him." The alpha pressure in the room was immediate, heavy, suffocating. The stranger stiffened, recognition flashing across his face. "M. Moretti," he said. "I didn't realize." "That's because," Alessandro interrupted calmly, "you didn't check." The man swallowed. "I meant no harm." Alessandro's gaze was ice. "Leave," he said, "before you make this worse." The man didn't hesitate. He backed away, nearly tripping over himself in his rush to escape. Silence followed. Milo stared. "Holy, go," Alessandro said quietly to Milo. Milo didn't argue. Luca stood there, heart hammering. "I told you," Alessandro said, turning to him, voice low and controlled, "to tell me if anyone approached you." "I didn't want to be dramatic," Luca snapped. Alessandro's jaw tightened. "That man wasn't flirting," he said. "He was evaluating." "For what?" Alessandro met his eyes. Leverage. Something cold settled in Luca's stomach. "This is real," Luca whispered. "Yes," Alessandro said. "It always was." Luca's voice shook despite himself. "You said you wouldn't cage me." "I won't," Alessandro said immediately. "But I will protect you." "How?" Alessandro stepped closer, not touching, but close enough that Luca could feel him, solid and unyielding. By making it very clear, Alessandro said softly, "that you are not available to be tested." Luca exhaled, shaky. "You're scary when you do that." Alessandro's expression softened just slightly. "And you're brave," he replied. "For staying." Luca laughed weakly. "I think I'm just stubborn." Alessandro nodded. "That too." That night, back in the penthouse, Luca sat curled on the couch processing. "You didn't overstep," Luca said quietly. "Earlier, at the cafe." Alessandro looked at him. "I came when you asked. You came before I asked." "Yes," Alessandro said. "That's the part I'm working on." Luca smiled faintly. "You broke one of your own rules," Luca said. Alessandro raised an eyebrow. "Which one?" "You're getting attached." Alessandro didn't deny it. Instead, he said, "So are you." Luca hated that he was right. Because somewhere between the contract and the confrontation, Luca had stopped feeling like a guest, and started feeling like someone worth protecting. Luca knew his heat was coming before his body betrayed him. There was a restlessness under his skin that no amount of pacing fixed. His thoughts scattered. His scent suppressors stopped working as well as they should. The citrus edge of his omega scent warming, deepening into something softer, needier. It was subtle at first, then it wasn't. "This is bad," Luca muttered, standing in the penthouse bathroom at 3 a.m, staring at his reflection like it might have answers. His pupils were blown wide, his cheeks flushed. His heart wouldn't slow down. He checked the calendar on his phone, 2 days early. "Of course," he whispered. "Why wouldn't it be early?" He swallowed another suppressant, even though the label very clearly warned against doubling doses. It didn't help. From down the hall, he felt it. Alessandro. Not his scent, not fully, but the awareness of him. Like Luca's instincts had learned the shape of the Alpha's presence, and were now reaching for it without permission. "I am not doing this," Luca told himself firmly. He opened the bathroom door, and nearly ran straight into Alessandro. The Alpha froze instantly, eyes snapping to Luca's face, then, deliberately, away. "You're flushed," Alessandro said. "That's rude. You're shaking. That's also rude." Alessandro's jaw tightened. "Luca," the way he said his name, careful, restrained, made Luca's knees weak. "It started early," Luca admitted. Alessandro inhaled slowly through his nose, then stepped back. "I'll call the doctor," he said immediately. "We'll adjust your suppressants." "I already tried," Luca said. "It's not working." Silence fell between them, not heavy, charged. Alessandro straightened his shoulders like a man bracing for impact. "Then I'll leave," he said. Luca blinked. "Leave?" "For the night," Alessandro clarified. "You'll have privacy." The thought of being alone made Luca's chest tighten unexpectedly. I don't want you to leave, he said before he could stop himself. Alessandro went very still. Luca, he said carefully, you don't get to say that unless you mean it. Luca's heart hammered. I mean, he said, voice unsteady, I don't want to be alone. Not like this. Alessandro looked at him then, really looked. There was restraint there, tension wound tight as wire. Want, banked but burning. I won't touch you, Alessandro said. I won't influence you. I know, Luca whispered. Another step closer. Still no contact. But you smell like heat, Alessandro continued quietly. And I am an alpha. I know, Luca said again, fists clenched at his sides. That's why I'm asking you to stay. Alessandro closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, his voice was lower. If I stay, he said, there are rules. Luca nodded immediately. Name them. No physical contact, Alessandro said. No bonding, no claiming. You don't agree to anything tonight that you wouldn't agree to tomorrow. Luca swallowed. Okay, and if you tell me to leave, Alessandro added, I leave. Immediately, Luca nodded again. Okay. Another long silence. Then Alessandro stepped past him. Not toward the bedroom, but toward the couch. I'll sleep there, he said. You take the room. Luca hesitated. I don't want to sleep alone, he admitted, hating how small his voice sounded. Alessandro stopped. Luca, he said carefully, if I get into that bed, you won't touch me, Luca said quickly. I trust you. That did it. Alessandro turned slowly. Trust. That word hit harder than instinct ever could. Get in bed, Alessandro said quietly. I'll sit. Fully clothed. On the far side, Luca nodded, relief and nerves tangling painfully in his chest. The bed was too big, too quiet. Luca curled on his side, trying not to breathe too deeply, trying not to focus on the alpha presence behind him. Solid, warm, restrained to an almost painful degree. Alessandro sat against the headboard, hands folded, eyes fixed on the far wall. Minutes passed. Luca's heat rolled through him in waves, uncomfortable, disorienting, tugging at instincts he'd spent years managing. This sucks, Luca whispered. Alessandro huffed a quiet breath. That is an understatement. Luca shifted restlessly. Without thinking, he reached back and stopped himself inches from contact. Alessandro noticed anyway. Luca, he said softly. I know, Luca said quickly. I'm sorry. I wasn't thinking. Alessandro hesitated. Then, slowly, he reached out, not touching Luca, touching the mattress, close enough that Luca could feel the warmth without the contact. If you ground yourself, Alessandro said, voice controlled but strained, do it with words, or sound, or breath, not touch. Luca nodded, eyes burning. Tell me something, Luca said suddenly. What? Anything, Luca said. Just talk. Alessandro considered, then spoke. I grew up in a house where weakness was punished, he said quietly, where omegas were assets and alphas were weapons. Luca stilled. I learned control because it was safer than desire, Alessandro continued. You are the first person who's made that difficult. Luca's throat tightened. That's not fair, Luca whispered. I didn't mean to. I know, Alessandro said. That's why it matters. The heat eased slightly. Not gone, but quieter. Luca focused on Alessandro's voice, the steadiness of it, the choice behind every word. Eventually, exhaustion won. Luca drifted, half asleep, murmuring, Thank you for staying. Alessandro didn't answer, but he stayed exactly where he was, all night. Morning light crept across the sheets. Luca woke slowly, heat dulled but not gone, body heavy with sleep. He realized two things at once. One, Alessandro was still there. Two, Luca's hand was wrapped in Alessandro's sleeve. Sometime in the night he'd reached out, and Alessandro had let him, no touch, just presence. Alessandro looked down at their hands, then at Luca's face. You broke a rule, Alessandro said quietly. Luca flushed. I'm sorry, Alessandro shook his head. No, he said. I did. Luca frowned. How? Because, Alessandro said softly. I should have moved away. Their eyes met. Something fragile and dangerous passed between them. This can't keep happening, Luca whispered. I know, Alessandro said. Neither of them moved. Neither of them pulled away. And that was the real problem. The problem with pretending nothing had changed was that everything had... Luca felt it in the way Alessandro watched him now, too carefully, like Luca might disappear if he looked away too long. He felt it in the way the penthouse seemed smaller, quieter, like it was holding its breath. He felt it in himself, in the way his instincts leaned toward Alessandro without asking permission. It had been 3 days since the heat. 3 days since Luca had woken up, holding onto Alessandro's sleeve like it was an anchor, and neither of them had talked about it, which was, frankly, unbearable. "So," Luca said, breaking the silence as they sat across from each other at the kitchen island. "Are we going to pretend that didn't happen forever, or—" Alessandro didn't look up from his coffee. "Did something happen?" Luca stared at him. "Oh, you're going with denial," Luca said. "Bold choice." Alessandro finally met his gaze. His expression was calm, but his shoulders were tight, posture rigid in a way Luca now recognized as restraint. "You were in heat," Alessandro said evenly. "I stayed. Nothing inappropriate occurred." "That's not what I meant," Luca snapped. "Then, clarify." Luca laughed, sharp and frustrated. "You're impossible, and you're avoiding the point." Alessandro shot back. The words hung between them, charged. Luca pushed back from the island. "You said this would be simple." "I said it would be consensual," Alessandro corrected. "I didn't agree to this," Luca said, gesturing vaguely between them. "To whatever this is." Alessandro stood slowly. "Neither did I." There it was. The admission cracked something open. "You're the one with the rules," Luca said. "You're the one who said no attachment." "Yes," Alessandro said. "And you're the one who keeps stepping closer." Luca flinched. "That's not fair." "No," Alessandro said quietly. "It's accurate." Luca's scent shifted, sharp citrus edged with something wounded. "I didn't ask you to care," Luca said. Alessandro's jaw tightened. "You didn't have to..." Silence fell. Outside, the city moved on like nothing inside this penthouse was coming apart. "You want to know the truth?" Luca said suddenly. Alessandro nodded once. "Always. I don't like feeling like a liability," Luca said. "I don't like being watched. I don't like knowing that one wrong move could get someone hurt because of me." Alessandro's expression softened, but his voice stayed firm. "You are not a liability. You showed up at that cafe because of me," Luca shot back. "That man was there because of me. He was there because of my world," Alessandro said sharply. "Not you." "And yet," Luca said, "I'm the one standing in the blast radius." Alessandro stepped closer, frustration bleeding through his control. "I am trying to keep you out of it," he said. "You keep insisting on standing at the edge. Because I don't want to disappear into your shadow," Luca said fiercely. "I don't want to become someone who exists quietly so you don't have to worry." Alessandro froze. "That," he said slowly, "is not what I want." "Then what do you want?" Luca demanded. The question landed hard. Alessandro looked away first. "That's the problem," he said quietly. Luca's chest tightened. "You don't know." "I know too much," Alessandro replied. "I want things I shouldn't." Luca's voice dropped. "Like me?" Alessandro's gaze snapped back to him. "Yes." The word echoed. Luca's breath caught. His instincts surged, hopeful and terrified all at once. "You can't," Luca said hoarsely. "Not like that. This was supposed to be safe." "It is safe," Alessandro said. "What you're feeling doesn't change that. It does if you start making choices for me," Luca snapped. "It does if you stop seeing me as someone who can decide." Alessandro's hands clenched at his sides. "I would never..." "You already are," Luca interrupted. "You didn't tell me about the Watcher risk until it was in my face. You decide when I leave, when I stay, when I'm safe enough." "That's protection," Alessandro said tightly. "That's control," Luca shot back. The word hit like a slap. Alessandro went very still. "If I wanted control," he said coldly, "this conversation wouldn't be happening." Luca recoiled despite himself. "Then why does it feel like I'm already halfway owned?" The silence that followed was thick, suffocating. Finally, Alessandro spoke. "Because," he said quietly, "you are standing too close to my world without understanding the cost." Luca laughed bitterly. "And you are standing too close to mine without understanding what it means to be chosen." Alessandro's breath hitched. Luca pressed on, voice shaking now. "I didn't sign up to be a kept omega," he said. "I signed up to be protected while I stayed me." "You are you," Alessandro said immediately. "Then stop deciding who gets to see me," Luca said. "Stop hovering." Stop acting like I'm already bonded to you. Alessandro stared at him like Luca had just drawn blood. Is that what you think? Alessandro asked quietly. That I'm claiming you? Luca swallowed. You're acting like it. Alessandro stepped back. Physically, emotionally. I see, he said. The temperature in the room dropped. I will pull back, Alessandro said calmly. Immediately. Luca's heart lurched. That's not what I... You want space, Alessandro continued. You'll have it. That's not... I won't attend your outings unless you ask, Alessandro said. No advanced screening, no shadowing, no intervention unless you're in immediate danger. Luca's throat closed, and Alessandro added, voice steady but distant, we should revisit the terms of the arrangement. Luca stared at him. You're pushing me away. I'm respecting your boundary, Alessandro said. You made it very clear. Luca's instinct screamed in protest. This isn't what I wanted, Luca whispered. Alessandro looked at him then, really looked, and that, he said softly, is exactly why I have to do it. He turned and walked out of the room. Luca sank onto the couch, heart racing, chest aching. He'd wanted honesty, he'd wanted autonomy, he hadn't wanted this, and somewhere deep down, Luca realized something terrifying. He wasn't afraid of Alessandro's world anymore. He was afraid of losing his place in it. The distance hurt worse than Luca expected. It wasn't dramatic at first. Alessandro didn't disappear, he simply receded. No quiet presence at Luca's shoulder. No text checking if he'd eaten. No calm voice grounding the room when Luca's instincts flared. Protection without proximity, autonomy without comfort. Luca hated how quickly he noticed the absence. On the fourth night, Luca couldn't sleep. He lay sprawled across the massive bed, staring at the ceiling, heat long gone but restlessness lingering like an echo. His thoughts circled the same truths he'd been avoiding since the fight. He didn't want to be owned, but he did want to be held in place by someone who understood him, someone who asked before touching, someone who listened when he said stop, someone who could overpower him, and chose not to unless invited. The realization settled heavy and undeniable. Oh, Luca whispered. That's the problem. He sat up, heart racing, not with fear, but clarity. Luca got out of bed and walked barefoot down the hall. Alessandro's office door was still open. The light inside was low. Alessandro sat behind the desk, sleeves rolled up, collar loosened, hands folded like he was holding himself together by sheer will. He looked up instantly. Luca, he said. Just his name. Careful. Neutral. I need to talk, Luca said. Alessandro stood immediately. If this is about the terms, it's not, Luca said quickly. It's about me. That made Alessandro pause. All right, he said. Come in. Luca closed the door behind him. The click sounded final. For a moment, they just stood there. Alpha and Omega, tension coiled tight between them. I didn't explain myself well, Luca said. Before, Alessandro nodded once. You don't owe me. I do, Luca interrupted. If I want you to understand. That got his attention. Luca took a breath. I don't hate the control, he said quietly. I hate losing it. Alessandro's eyes sharpened, not predatory but focused. Explain, he said. I like structure, Luca continued. I like knowing where the lines are. I like feeling contained. But only when I choose it. The air shifted. You're saying, Alessandro said slowly, that you don't want freedom from me, Luca swallowed. I want freedom with you. Silence stretched. Then Alessandro spoke, voice low and deliberate. You're describing a power exchange. Luca nodded. Yes. Alessandro studied him carefully, like he was handling something fragile and volatile all at once. That isn't something I would ever impose, Alessandro said. I know, Luca said. That's why I'm asking. The words hung there, soft, dangerous. Alessandro took a slow step closer. Luca, he said, this would mean negotiation, rules, safe words, absolute consent. That's what I want, Luca said, heart pounding. Not assumptions, not instincts, choice. Alessandro exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. You realize, he said, that if I take that role I don't do it halfway. Luca's breath hitched, but he nodded. I don't want halfway. Another step closer. Still no touch. Tell me what you want, Alessandro said. Luca's voice shook, but he didn't look away. I want you to tell me what to do, he said. Sometimes, I want to give you control, in specific moments. I want to know I can stop it with a word, and that you will. Alessandro's jaw tightened, restraint vibrating through him. And what do you want me to never do, he asked. Touch me without asking, Luca said immediately. Use my heat against me. Decide for me when I haven't given permission. Agreed, Alessandro said instantly. And I want aftercare, Luca added softly. Not just silence. Something in Alessandro's expression broke open. Just a crack. Always, he said. They stood there close enough now that Luca could feel Alessandro's warmth without contact. Safe word, Alessandro said. Yellow, Luca replied. And red. Good, Alessandro said. If you say red, everything stops. Luca nodded. Alessandro hesitated, then asked quietly, May I touch you? The question alone made Luca's knees weak. Yes, he said. Alessandro reached out slowly, giving Luca time to pull back, and rested 2 fingers beneath Luca's chin, tilting his face up just enough to meet his eyes. The contact was light, reverent, controlled. Look at me, Alessandro said softly. Luca did. The command settled deep, grounding him instantly. You are choosing this, Alessandro said. Say it. I'm choosing this, Luca whispered. Good, Alessandro said. He didn't kiss him, didn't push further. Instead, he withdrew his hand. That's enough for tonight, Alessandro said. Luca blinked. That's it? Yes, Alessandro said. You trusted me. I won't take more than you offered. Luca laughed softly, breathless. You're infuriating. Alessandro's mouth curved faintly. You're safe. He guided Luca, not by force but by presence, toward the couch. Sit, Alessandro said. Luca did. Alessandro sat beside him, not touching but close. After a moment, Alessandro draped a blanket over Luca's shoulders, firm and careful. Breathe, he said. Luca did, and for the first time since the fight, the tension in his chest eased. This doesn't mean I belong to you, Luca said quietly. No, Alessandro agreed. It means you trusted me with yourself. Luca leaned back, exhausted but calm. That's worse, he murmured. Alessandro smiled, soft, real. Yes, he said, it is. And in that quiet room, with rules spoken and lines clearly drawn, Luca finally understood. Control wasn't about being taken. It was about being held, only as tightly as he asked. Luca learned quickly that negotiated control was far more intense than instinctual dominance, because instinct took, choice waited, and Alessandro waited like a loaded weapon held in perfect restraint. The first test came 3 nights later. They were in the penthouse. Again. Dim lights, quiet city beyond the glass. Luca sat on the edge of the couch, knees bouncing, nerves alive under his skin. He had asked for this moment, planned it. Still, his pulse raced. Alessandro stood across from him, jacket discarded, sleeves rolled neatly to his forearms. You're restless, Alessandro said. Yes, Luca admitted. Tell me why. Because I want to know if this is real, Luca said. Not just theory. Alessandro nodded slowly. Then we proceed carefully, he said, and you tell me everything. Luca swallowed. Okay. Alessandro took 1 step closer. Stand, he said. The word hit Luca like a switch. He stood immediately. Then froze, startled by his own response. Alessandro noticed. A flicker of satisfaction crossed his face, but he tempered it instantly. Good, Alessandro said. Now breathe. Luca did, grounding himself. Hands behind your back, Alessandro said gently. Luca hesitated, just long enough to check himself. Yes, he said. He complied. Alessandro did not touch him. Instead, he circled slowly, presence pressing in from all sides. Luca's instincts flared, wanting, waiting, but the rules held firm. You're doing well, Alessandro murmured. But I need to know something. What? Are you doing this because you want to give up control? Alessandro asked. Or because you trust me to give it back? The question made Luca's chest ache. The second one, he said softly. Alessandro stopped in front of him. That, he said quietly, is the correct answer. He reached out, not to restrain, not to claim, but to adjust Luca's posture, a single finger against Luca's wrist. Barely there. Do you feel that? Alessandro asked. Yes, Luca whispered. That's awareness, Alessandro said. Not possession. Luca's breath shook. Alessandro's phone buzzed. The sound shattered the moment. Alessandro glanced at the screen, and his entire demeanor changed. The alpha pressure in the room sharpened, sudden and dangerous. What? Luca asked, instincts flaring. Alessandro didn't answer immediately. Then someone tested my perimeter. Luca's stomach dropped. What does that mean? It means, Alessandro said calmly, Someone wanted to see if you were still under my protection. Fear spiked. But so did something else. Anger. I thought you said you were pulling back, Luca said. I did, Alessandro replied. From you, not from them. Alessandro stepped closer, hands finally coming to rest lightly at Luca's sides. Grounding, firm, controlled. Listen to me, Alessandro said. This is where the rules matter. Luca nodded. I need you to choose, Alessandro continued. Do you want me to take control now, or do you want autonomy? Luca's heart pounded. The danger was real. The choice was real. Take control, Luca said. Alessandro didn't move immediately. Say it clearly, he said. I am choosing to give you control, Luca said, voice steady despite the fear. For this moment. Alessandro exhaled slowly. Good, he said. Then follow my instructions exactly. Yes. Sit, Luca sat, hands on your thighs. Done. Do not move unless I tell you to. Luca nodded. Alessandro stepped back, pulling out his phone, issuing quiet commands to someone on the other end. Luca didn't understand the words, but he understood the tone. Absolute authority. Minutes passed. Luca's muscles trembled, not from fear, but from the effort of holding still, of trusting, of waiting. Finally, Alessandro returned. It's handled, he said. Luca sagged with relief before he could stop himself. Alessandro immediately noticed. Look at me, he said. Luca did. That was well done, Alessandro said softly. You stayed present. You stayed safe. The praise hit harder than anything else had. Luca's eyes burned. I'm shaking, he admitted. I know, Alessandro said. Come here. He opened his arms but didn't pull Luca in. Luca stepped forward willingly. Alessandro wrapped him in a firm, grounding hold. No dominance now, no command, just warmth, stability, aftercare. Luca exhaled shakily, fingers clutching Alessandro's shirt. You didn't lose yourself, Alessandro murmured. You trusted me. And I protected you. You scared me, Luca whispered. Yes, Alessandro said honestly, and I will never do that without your consent. Luca nodded against his chest. I don't regret it, Luca said quietly. Alessandro closed his eyes. Neither do I, he replied. But as he held Luca, careful, controlled, reverent, Alessandro realized something dangerous. Someone had tested him, and next time they wouldn't stop at watching. The city was quiet in a way Luca had never heard before. Not silent, just holding its breath. He stood barefoot in Alessandro's bedroom, fingers twisting together, heart pounding so hard it made his ears ring. The danger from earlier still clung to his skin, but it had shifted into something else now, something heavy and intimate and unavoidable. Alessandro closed the door behind them, not locking it, just closing it. That choice you made earlier, Alessandro said quietly, turning to face him, still stands only if you want it to. Luca swallowed. I do, he said. Alessandro studied him, really looked, checking for fear, for doubt, for hesitation. He found none. Then tonight, Alessandro said, voice low and steady, we don't pretend anymore. The words sent a shiver straight through Luca. Alessandro stepped closer, stopping just short of touching. You are not mine because I say so, he continued. You are here because you want to be. Luca nodded. I want you. The honesty of it startled them both. Alessandro's breath hitched, just once. Say it again, he murmured. I want you, Luca repeated. Not because you're an alpha, not because you're powerful, because you see me. That was what broke him. Alessandro reached out, slow, deliberate, and cupped Luca's face in both hands, thumbs warm against his jaw. Then I will be careful with you, he said. He leaned in, giving Luca time, space, to pull away. Luca didn't. Their kiss was unhurried, deepening gradually, like they were learning the shape of each other's boundaries with their mouths. No rush, no claiming, just warmth and certainty, and the quiet knowledge that this was chosen. Alessandro pulled back slightly, resting his forehead against Luca's. If at any point you want to stop, he said softly. I'll say red, Luca replied. And if you don't? Alessandro asked. Luca smiled, nervous and radiant. Then don't you dare stop. That earned a low laugh from Alessandro, real, unguarded. He guided Luca backward toward the bed, one hand at his waist, firm but asking. Luca followed willingly, knees bumping the mattress as he sat. Alessandro didn't push him down. Instead, he knelt. That alone made Luca's breath stutter. You're shaking, Alessandro observed. Because I want this, Luca said, and I'm scared. Alessandro kissed his knuckles. Those can coexist. He rose again, pressing one last, lingering kiss to Luca's lips. Then the lights dimmed further, the world narrowing to breath and warmth and the sound of fabric shifting. Time blurred. Touch became language. And when Alessandro finally pulled Luca down with him, holding him close, there was no rush, only closeness, whispered reassurances, and the kind of intimacy that didn't need to be described to be understood. Later, much later, Luca lay against Alessandro's chest, listening to the steady heartbeat beneath his ear. "We really did that," Luca murmured. "Yes," Alessandro said, one hand stroking his hair. "We did." Luca tilted his head up. "Do you regret it?" Alessandro kissed his forehead. "No," he said, "but it changes things." Luca smiled faintly. "Good." Outside, the city exhaled. Inside, something fragile and dangerous and real had finally taken root, and somewhere beyond the glass and steel, someone was already watching. Luca woke to warmth, not the disorienting heat of instinct, not panic, not the hollow echo of being alone, but steady warmth, solid and real. Alessandro's arm was heavy around his waist, possessive without pressure. Luca lay still for a moment, listening to the slow rhythm of his breathing, the quiet hum of the city filtering through the glass walls. Sunlight cut across the bed in pale gold. Morning, Luca thought. We made it to morning. He shifted slightly, testing the reality of it. Alessandro stirred immediately. "Don't run," Alessandro murmured, voice rough with sleep. Luca smiled despite himself. "Wasn't planning on it." Alessandro opened his eyes, dark and searching, scanning Luca's face like he was checking for damage. "You okay?" Alessandro asked. "Yes," Luca said softly. "Are you?" Alessandro paused, then nodded once. "I am now." They stayed like that for a few seconds, suspended in something fragile and new. Then reality knocked. Alessandro's phone vibrated on the nightstand. Once, twice, a third time, insistent. Alessandro closed his eyes briefly, then reached for it. One glance at the screen was enough to drain the softness from his expression. "We have a problem," he said. Luca's stomach tightened. "How bad?" Alessandro sat up slowly, careful not to jostle Luca. "They know what?" Luca asked. "That you stayed here last night," Alessandro said. "That I didn't leave." Luca pushed himself upright. "Your people? And my enemies," Alessandro replied. The room seemed colder suddenly. "I didn't mean to." Luca started. Alessandro cut him off immediately. "You didn't do anything wrong." He turned fully toward Luca, hands firm on his shoulders. "This is my failure," Alessandro said. "I let my guard down because I wanted one night where I wasn't a weapon." Luca searched his face. "And now?" "And now," Alessandro said, voice iron hard. "They think they've found leverage." Luca swallowed. "Me?" "Yes," Alessandro said honestly. The truth hurt, but Alessandro didn't soften it. "I will not lie to you," he continued. "Being close to me puts you in danger." Luca met his gaze. "You think I don't know that by now?" Alessandro exhaled, sharp and conflicted. "You should leave the penthouse today," Alessandro said. "For a few days. Somewhere secure. Off-grid." Luca's chest tightened. "You're sending me away." "I'm keeping you alive," Alessandro snapped, then stopped himself, forcing his tone calmer. "I'm asking you to trust me." Luca swung his legs over the side of the bed, hands clenched. "Last night changed things," Luca said. "You don't get to pretend it didn't." "I'm not," Alessandro said quickly. "I'm trying to make sure there is a future to argue about." Luca stood, wrapping the blanket around himself like armor. "I won't be hidden," Luca said. "Not again." Alessandro stood too, slowly, deliberately. "Then we need to renegotiate," he said. Luca looked up. "How?" "If you stay," Alessandro said, "you do it publicly. As someone under my protection. No ambiguity, no shadows." Luca's breath caught. "That paints a target on my back," Luca said. "Yes," Alessandro agreed. "But it also makes touching you an act of war." Silence stretched between them. "You'd be claiming me," Luca said quietly. Alessandro didn't deny it. "I would be acknowledging what already exists," he said. "Without the bond, without the ritual. Only the truth." Luca studied him, this dangerous, infuriating man who had asked before touching, stopped when told, and held him through the night like something precious. "And if I say no?" Luca asked. Alessandro answered immediately. "Then you leave today, and I will never stop protecting you from a distance." Luca laughed softly, shaking his head. "You really don't know how to half-love someone, do you?" Alessandro's jaw tightened. No. Luca stepped closer. I'm scared, Luca admitted. But I'm more scared of walking away and wondering. Alessandro's eyes darkened. This won't be gentle, he warned. My world is sharp. Luca lifted his chin. So am I. For a moment, Alessandro looked at him like he might fall to his knees. Instead, he nodded. Then we do this properly, Alessandro said. Breakfast, security briefing, and then... The world meets you. Luca's heart raced. As what? Alessandro reached out, thumb brushing Luca's wrist. Warm, grounding. As the man who chose me, Alessandro said. And didn't flinch. Outside, engines hummed, guards repositioning, plans shifting. Morning had come, and with it, the line between private desire and public war was finally irrevocably crossed. Luca learned very quickly that being seen was more dangerous than being hidden. The car ride down from the penthouse garage was silent, armored glass sealing them in as the city blurred past. Alessandro sat beside him, immaculate in a dark suit, one hand resting on Luca's knee, not possessive, not performative. Grounding. This isn't a show of affection, Alessandro said quietly. It's a signal. Luca nodded. I won't flinch. Alessandro's thumb pressed once, approving. The car slowed. Remember, Alessandro continued, no one here gets access to you without going through me. And if someone tries? Luca asked. Alessandro's mouth curved thinly. Then we learn who they work for. The car doors opened. The building was old money and violence. Marble floors, gilded ceilings, guards who didn't bother hiding their weapons. The air smelled like expensive cologne and old grudges. Luca felt it instantly. Alphas. So many alphas. Their gazes snapped toward him as he entered beside Alessandro, interest sharpening to something predatory before curdling into calculation. This, Luca murmured under his breath, is your family reunion. Alessandro huffed quietly. Worse. They reached the long conference table already occupied. At the head sat Don Vittorio Morelli, silver-haired, broad-shouldered, eyes like a blade dulled by age but still lethal. To his right lounged Elena Rossi, an alpha woman with sharp cheekbones and sharper eyes, dressed in crimson like she wanted blood to match. On the left, too casual, too relaxed, sat Marco De Luca. Luca stiffened. The resemblance was impossible to miss. Dark hair. Same mouth. Same infuriatingly familiar smirk. You didn't tell me you had a cousin, Luca muttered. Alessandro's jaw tightened. I was hoping you wouldn't meet him like this. Marco's gaze slid to Luca, slow and assessing. Well, Marco drawled, I see the rumors were underselling him. Alessandro's hand tightened on Luca's knee. Careful, Alessandro warned. Marco grinned. Relax, I'm admiring. That allowed? No, Alessandro said flatly. Elena laughed softly. Oh, this is already entertaining. Don Vittorio raised a hand, silencing the room. Alessandro, the Don said. You've brought company. Luca straightened. This is Luca, Alessandro said. He's under my protection. The word landed heavy. Several alphas shifted. Elena's eyes narrowed. Protection, she echoed. Or indulgence? Luca felt Alessandro's irritation spike, but he spoke calmly. Those are not mutually exclusive, Alessandro replied. Marco leaned forward. You didn't bring him here just to show him off. What changed? Alessandro met his cousin's gaze. Someone breached my perimeter. The room stilled. Don Vittorio's expression hardened. Explain. 3 nights ago, Alessandro said. Testing, not an attack. They wanted confirmation. Elena tapped a manicured nail against the table. Confirmation of what? Alessandro glanced down at Luca. Of leverage. Murmurs rippled through the room. Luca felt it then. Not fear, but anger. He was being discussed like an asset, a variable, a weakness. He stepped forward. I'm not leverage, Luca said clearly. Every eye snapped to him. Marco blinked, then laughed. Oh, I like him. Alessandro didn't stop Luca. That attempt failed, Luca continued. And if someone's planning something bigger, they're underestimating how much noise I can make. Silence. Then Elena smiled. Slow, sharp. An omega with teeth, she said. Dangerous combination. Don Vittorio studied Luca intently. Do you know what standing beside him means? Yes, Luca said. It means I don't get to pretend I'm invisible. Alessandro's chest tightened. Don Vittorio leaned back. Bold, reckless, Elena countered. And useful. Marco's smile faded. Depends who's pulling the strings. Alessandro spoke then, voice cutting through the tension. No one is pulling his strings, he said. That's the point. Don Vittorio nodded slowly. Very well. He looked around the table. Until we know who tested Alessandro's defenses, the Don said, Luca is off limits. Any move against him is a move against this family. Some alphas bristled. Elena tilted her head. And if the threat comes from inside? The room went very still. Alessandro didn't hesitate. Then I'll burn the rod out myself. Marco studied him, eyes narrowing, not amused now. You're changing, Marco said quietly. That makes you predictable. Alessandro met his gaze. No, it makes me honest. Marco leaned back, exhaling. That might get you killed. Luca spoke before Alessandro could. Then whoever tries, Luca said calmly, better not miss. The silence that followed was stunned. Then Marco laughed, genuine and sharp. Okay, he said, yeah, I really like him. Elena's smile turned calculating. Don Vittorio rose, signaling the meeting's end. We watch, he said. We wait, and we see who blinks first. As they exited, Alessandro leaned close to Luca. You did well, he murmured. Luca exhaled. I think I just made enemies. Alessandro's thumb pressed reassuringly into his wrist. Yes, he said. And allies. Across the room, Marco watched them with a thoughtful expression. Outside, unseen eyes tracked Luca's movements, and somewhere in the city someone decided it was time to stop testing and start hunting. Marco de Luca did not wait for permission. That, Luca would later realize, was the most honest thing about him. The invitation arrived that evening, delivered, not through Alessandro's channels, but directly to Luca's phone. Marco, drinks, neutral ground. You deserve context. Luca stared at the screen, pulse ticking up. You didn't block him? Alessandro asked calmly, though his jaw had gone tight. I didn't give him my number, Luca replied. Which feels worse, Alessandro exhaled slowly. He enjoys bypassing boundaries. Do you trust him? Luca asked. Alessandro paused. No, he said, but I don't dismiss him either. Luca looked back at the message. I want to hear what he has to say, Luca said. Alessandro's eyes snapped to him. Absolutely not alone. I wasn't asking to go alone, Luca replied. I was asking to go at all. Silence stretched. Marco was dangerous. That much was clear. Not loud dangerous like a gunshot, but quiet, smiling, knife behind the back dangerous. Which meant he knew things. Alessandro finally nodded once. 1 hour, public place. I stay within sight. Luca smiled faintly. Protective. Strategic, Alessandro corrected. The bar Marco chose was upscale and discreet. Soft jazz, low lighting, the kind of place where secrets dissolved into background noise. Marco was already there, lounging like he owned the room, suit immaculate, expression infuriatingly relaxed. Well, Marco said as Luca approached. You're even better lit. Alessandro stopped just behind Luca. Marco's smile sharpened. And you brought your guard dog. Alessandro's voice was ice careful. Marco raised his hands. Relax. I'm not here to fight. Luca slid into the seat across from him. Then talk. Marco's eyes flicked to Luca, appraising, curious. I wanted to meet you without an audience, Marco said lightly. You failed, Luca replied. Marco chuckled. I wanted to meet you without the mythology attached. Alessandro bristled. Marco leaned forward, lowering his voice. Someone inside the family leaked Alessandro's movements, Marco said. Not small time, not stupid. Luca stiffened. You're sure? Yes, Marco said. And whoever it is assumed Alessandro wouldn't bring an Omega into the spotlight. Alessandro's eyes narrowed. You're saying Luca disrupted the plan? Completely, Marco said. Which is why they'll adapt. Luca folded his hands. So what's your offer? Marco smiled wider. I protect information, he said. And I trade it. Alessandro snapped. You don't get to bargain with him. Marco's gaze slid to Alessandro. You don't get to decide that. The tension between them crackled. Old rivalry, old blood. Luca raised a hand. Enough. Marco, speak plainly. Marco's expression shifted, serious now. There's a second list, Marco said. Not just Luca. Other targets. Omega's connected to power players. Quiet removals. Luca's stomach dropped. A destabilization strategy, Marco continued. Take the emotional core out. Force mistake. Alessandro went very still. You have proof, Alessandro said. I have pieces, Marco replied. And access to more. Luca leaned forward. And what do you want in return? Marco studied him for a long moment. I want you, Marco said lightly. The room went cold. Alessandro's hand was on Luca's shoulder in a second. Firm, warning. Marco raised an eyebrow. Relax. Not like that. Luca didn't look away. Then explain. I want you as my point of contact, Marco said. Not Alessandro. You, Alessandro snapped. Absolutely not. Marco shrugged. You're compromised. Emotionally predictable. They know how to bait you now. Alessandro's nostrils flared. Luca's heart pounded, but he forced himself to stay calm. And me? Luca asked. They don't know what you'll do yet, Marco said. You're an unknown variable. That makes you dangerous. Alessandro turned to Luca sharply. No. Luca looked up at him. Let me choose, Luca said quietly. Marco's smile returned. Slow, pleased. You see why I like him? Marco said. Alessandro clenched his jaw. This puts you directly in the line of fire. Luca nodded. I already am. Silence. Alessandro searched Luca's face, for fear, doubt, hesitation. He found resolve. One condition, Alessandro said finally. Marco tilted his head. I'm listening. If you betray him, Alessandro said calmly, I will not kill you quickly. Marco laughed softly. Fair. Luca exhaled, tension buzzing through his veins. So, Luca said, we're doing this. Marco lifted his glass. Welcome to the ugly side of the family. Across the bar, Alessandro watched Luca, pride and terror twisting together in his chest, and somewhere far from jazz and polished smiles, someone noticed Marco's move. The board shifted, and Luca had just become a player. Luca did not tell Alessandro everything, not because he wanted to lie, but because if he said it out loud, Alessandro would stop him, and Luca needed this to happen. The message came just after noon, encrypted and brief. Unknown, you're braver than you think. Come alone if you want answers. Marco had warned him this would happen. They'll test you, Marco had said. Not with bullets, with confidence. Luca stared at the screen, heart steady in a way that surprised him. He typed back one word. Luca, where? The reply came instantly. Unknown, you already know. The art gallery sat on the edge of the financial district. Glass, white walls, expensive minimalism. The kind of place no one expected bloodshed. Public, civilian heavy. Perfect. Alessandro would hate it, which meant Luca had to go without him. He left the penthouse dressed simply. No visible security, no obvious markers. Just an Omega walking into a public space with his chin up and his instincts screaming. He felt eyes on him the moment he entered. Not guards, hunters. The gallery smelled of clean paint and champagne. Luca moved slowly, deliberately, stopping in front of a massive abstract piece, red slashes across white. Appropriate, he thought. You came, a voice said behind him. Luca didn't turn. You said alone, Luca replied. Not unprotected. A low chuckle, fair. The man who stepped beside him was unfamiliar. Alpha, mid-30s, expensive suit, smile like a practiced lie. Name? Luca asked. Victor Hale, the man said. Independent operator. That's a euphemism, Luca replied coolly. Victor laughed. You're sharper than expected. Luca finally faced him. You didn't call me here to compliment me. No, Victor admitted. I called you because Alessandro Moretti broke pattern. Luca folded his arms. You mean he stopped pretending he was untouchable? Victor's eyes gleamed. He exposed a weakness. Luca leaned closer, lowering his voice. No, Luca said. He acknowledged a choice. Victor studied him. Really studied him now. Do you know how many empires have fallen because an Alpha chose an Omega? Victor asked. Yes, Luca replied. And do you know how many Alphas died because they underestimated one? Victor smiled thinly. You think this ends well for you? I think, Luca said calmly, that you wouldn't be talking to me if you weren't trying to decide whether I'm worth more alive. That hit. Victor's smile slipped. You're bait, Victor said. You know that. Yes, Luca agreed, but not for Alessandro. Victor's gaze sharpened. Then for who? Luca met his eyes. For you. The silence between them was electric. You came here alone, Victor said slowly. Because you want us to think Alessandro doesn't control you. Correct. And because you want to see who bites. Yes, Victor exhaled a laugh. You're insane. Possibly, Luca said. But I'm not powerless. Victor tilted his head. What do you want? The list, Luca said. The one with the Omegas. Victor's eyes darkened. That list doesn't exist, Victor said. Luca smiled faintly. Lie better. Victor stared at him. Then, quietly, "You don't know what you're asking." "I know exactly what I'm asking," Luca replied. "And I know you didn't expect me to." The moment stretched too long, then Victor leaned in, voice dropping. "If I give you one name," he said, "you walk out of here and pretend this never happened." Luca nodded. "One name." Victor glanced around, then murmured it. The name hit Luca like ice water. "She's not connected," Luca said softly. Victor's smile was humorless. "She is now—" Before Luca could respond, a sudden shift rippled through the room. The air went wrong. Luca felt it a heartbeat before the gunshot. Glass shattered. Screams erupted. Victor swore, grabbing Luca's wrist. "Move," Victor barked. Luca yanked free. "Don't touch me." Another shot. Closer. Too close. Security surged, but not gallery security. Black suits. Earpieces. "Alessandro." "No," Luca whispered. Alessandro appeared through the chaos like a storm given human shape, eyes locking onto Luca instantly. Relief. Then fury. He crossed the distance in seconds, grabbing Luca, pulling him hard against his chest. "What did I say?" Alessandro snarled under his breath. "I said I'd be careful," Luca shot back. Not obedient. Alessandro's hands shook where they held him. "You walked into a kill zone," Alessandro said. "Alone, and I walked out with a name," Luca replied. Alessandro froze. "What?" Luca leaned in, speaking fast. "Victor Hale," he confirmed the list. "Gave me a name. We're running out of time." Alessandro stared at him. Rage, fear, pride warring in his expression. "You terrify me," Alessandro said hoarsely. Luca swallowed. "I know." Another explosion rocked the far end of the gallery. Alessandro pulled Luca behind him instinctively. "You are never doing that again," Alessandro said. Luca didn't argue. Because this time, he hadn't done it to prove anything. He'd done it because the war had already started. And he was no longer just standing beside an Alpha. He was standing in front of. The gallery never reopened. By the time the last scream faded, and the police sirens closed in, the place had already been scrubbed of truth. Glass replaced, cameras seized, witnesses paid or silenced, but the damage was done, because Alphas had seen Alessandro Moretti panic. Luca sat in the back of the armored car, pulse still racing, Alessandro's hands locked tight around his wrists like he was afraid Luca might evaporate if he let go. "You don't get to scare me like that," Alessandro said hoarsely. Luca met his gaze. "You don't get to decide how I fight." The car was silent except for their breathing. Then Alessandro did something Luca had never seen before. He laughed, once, sharp, broken. "You walked into an ambush," Alessandro said. Smiled at it, negotiated. "I succeeded," Luca replied. "And I lost control," Alessandro snapped. In public, the words were poison. Luca's expression softened. "You saved me. I endangered you," Alessandro shot back. "Because I couldn't think straight." He released Luca abruptly and leaned back, pressing his hand over his face. "That man touched you," Alessandro said. "In front of witnesses." Luca stilled. "You didn't say that was a rule." Alessandro looked at him, eyes dark, feral. "It shouldn't have to be," he said. The car stopped, not at the penthouse, at the Moretti estate. Luca's stomach tightened. "This isn't where we agreed." "I need witnesses," Alessandro said flatly. "I need them to see." "To see what?" Luca asked. Alessandro didn't answer. The estate was already awake, guards lining the entrance, staff frozen in place, tension vibrating through the air. Word had spread fast. Alessandro exited the car first. Then he turned and held out his hand to Luca. Not a command, an invitation. Luca took it. The moment they stepped inside, the room went silent. Elena Rossi stood near the staircase, expression sharp. Marco leaned against a pillar, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. Don Vittorio sat at the head of the room. Alessandro didn't slow. He led Luca straight to the center of the marble floor and stopped. "This ends now," Alessandro said, voice echoing. Every Alpha in the room felt it. The pressure, the shift, the dominance rolling off him unchecked. "Anyone who authorized today's test," Alessandro continued, "has declared war." Murmurs rippled. Elena lifted an eyebrow. "You're emotional." Alessandro turned on her like a blade. "Yes," he said. "And that's your warning." He pulled Luca closer. Not tight, not painful, but unmistakable. Public, visible, chosen. "This Omega," Alessandro said, "is not leverage. He is not bait. He is not a weakness." Luca's heart pounded. "He is a boundary," Alessandro finished. "Cross it, and I end you." The room went deadly quiet. Marco straightened slowly. "You're making him a symbol." "Yes," Alessandro replied, "and symbols survive longer than secrets." Don Vittorio rose, voice calm but dangerous. "You're risking everything." Alessandro met his gaze. "I already did. Today." Silence. Then Don Vittorio nodded once. "So be it," the Don said. "Anyone who moves against Luca moves against you." Luca felt the weight of it settle, heavy and irreversible. Alessandro exhaled slowly, control bleeding back in, now that the declaration was made. But the cost was already paid. As the meeting dissolved into quiet chaos, Marco approached Luca, eyes sharp. "You know," Marco said quietly, "half of them will hate you now." Luca met his gaze. "And the other half?" Marco smiled thinly. "They'll fear you." Alessandro returned to Luca's side, hand firm at his lower back. "You didn't ask," Luca murmured. Alessandro's voice was low, raw. "I couldn't." Luca turned to face him. "Then we'll talk about it later." Alessandro searched his face, then nodded. "Yes." That night, in the quiet aftermath, Luca stood at the window of the estate bedroom, city lights burning below. Alessandro approached from behind, slow, careful. "I crossed a line," Alessandro said. "You drew one," Luca replied. "There is a difference." Alessandro rested his forehead against Luca's shoulder. "I don't know how to protect you without wanting to own the world around you," he confessed. Luca turned, cupping his face gently. "Then learn," Luca said softly. "With me. Not over me." Alessandro closed his eyes. Outside, alliances shifted. Inside, something fundamental had changed. Alessandro Moretti had shown the world his breaking point, and Luca had just become the most dangerous thing in the room. Not because he was protected, but because the Alpha who loved him had finally stopped pretending otherwise. The estate bedroom smelled like expensive cologne and something sharper. Adrenaline, maybe. Or want. Luca stood in front of the mirror while Alessandro watched him from the chair, suit jacket discarded, shirt sleeves rolled, cufflinks tossed carelessly onto the table like an afterthought. "You're quiet," Alessandro said. Luca met his gaze through the reflection. "I'm thinking." "That's dangerous," Alessandro replied dryly. Luca smiled. "You told the world I was a boundary," Luca said. "You didn't tell me what that bought me." Alessandro's eyes darkened. "It bought you everything," he said, "and cost me my restraint." Luca turned slowly, leaning back against the dresser. "Show me," he said. The words were soft. The meaning wasn't. Alessandro stood. The air shifted instantly, Alpha presence flooding the room, thick and deliberate. He stopped an arm's length away, close enough that Luca could feel the heat rolling off him. "You don't get to provoke me unless you're prepared for the consequences," Alessandro said. Luca tilted his head. "I am..." Alessandro laughed under his breath. Low, dangerous. "You like knowing you can ruin me," Alessandro said. "I like knowing you let me," Luca replied. "That did it." Alessandro reached out, not rough, not gentle, thumb brushing along Luca's jaw, lifting his chin. "Do you know how much money changed hands today because of you?" Alessandro asked quietly. Luca's pulse jumped. "No, 7 accounts frozen, 3 contracts rewritten. 1 man fled the country," Alessandro said. "All because I made it clear you're not touchable." Luca swallowed. "That's obscene." "Yes," Alessandro agreed. "And you're enjoying it." Luca didn't deny it. Alessandro's thumb pressed harder, forcing Luca to look at him. "You live in my penthouse. You wear what I buy. You eat what I provide. And now," Alessandro said, voice dropping, "you carry my name like a loaded weapon." Luca's breath hitched. "That's sugar daddy talk," Luca murmured. Alessandro smiled slowly. "No. That's patronage." He stepped closer, crowding Luca against the dresser. "You wanted to be seen," Alessandro continued. "This is what being seen costs." Luca's instincts purred, dangerous and thrilled. "And what do you get?" Luca asked. Alessandro leaned in, mouth near Luca's ear, voice like velvet and steel. "I get to spoil you," he said, "and ruin anyone who mistakes that for ownership." Luca shivered. "Clothes," Alessandro went on. "Security, influence, indulgence. Anything you want, if you ask. And if I don't?" Luca whispered. Alessandro pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. "Then I'll give you more than you expect," he said. The silence stretched, thick, intimate, charged. Luca broke it. "I don't want to be kept," Luca said. "I want to be chosen." Alessandro's expression softened, just a fraction. "Then choose," he said. Luca reached out and took Alessandro's hand. I choose you, Luca said. And your money, and your power, and your mess. Alessandro exhaled slowly, eyes burning. Dangerous answer, he said. Luca smiled. You like dangerous. Alessandro's hand slid to Luca's waist. Firm, claiming without crossing the line. You're going to wear what I buy tomorrow, Alessandro said. You'll sit beside me. You'll let them see what my attention looks like. And afterward? Luca asked. Alessandro's mouth curved. Afterward, he said, I'll remind you exactly who's paying for your silence. Luca laughed softly, breathless. That sounds like a threat. Alessandro leaned in, brushing a kiss just beneath Luca's jaw. Close enough to promise, far enough to ache. No, Alessandro murmured. That's an investment. Later, much later, Luca lay sprawled across the silk sheets, half-dazed, while Alessandro fastened a sleek black collar around his wrist instead of his throat. Subtle, expensive, symbolic. For the cameras, Alessandro said. And for you. Luca traced the metal with his thumb. You're corrupting me, Luca said. Alessandro smiled like a sinner. You were never clean, he replied. You were just waiting for someone rich enough to sin properly. Outside the estate, enemies watched the lights burn late. Inside, Luca finally understood. He wasn't being bought, he was being indulged, and that might be far more dangerous. The gala was a performance. Everything about it was designed to remind people who held the city by the throat. Crystal chandeliers, champagne older than grudges, music soft enough to hide conspiracies. Luca stepped out of the car and felt the attention hit him like heat. Alessandro didn't rush him. He stood beside him, immaculate in black, one hand settling at Luca's lower back with quiet authority. Remember, Alessandro murmured, lips barely moving, tonight you don't chase attention. Luca glanced up at him. I let it come to me? Alessandro smiled faintly. Exactly. Luca wore what Alessandro had chosen. Not loud, not flashy. Perfect, tailored dark silk, open just enough at the throat to be intentional. Jewelry subtle but unmistakably expensive. Custom, discreet, the kind of pieces people recognized without being able to name. The wrist cuff gleamed softly under the lights. Eyes followed it, so did calculations. The doors opened, and the room noticed. Conversations dipped. Heads turned. Whispers rippled outward like shockwaves. That's him, someone murmured. The Omega, said another. With Moretti? Luca felt it all, and didn't flinch. Alessandro guided him through the room with a hand that never tightened, never loosened. Possession without desperation. Elena Rossi intercepted them near the bar, dressed in liquid gold and trouble. Well, she said, eyes sliding over Luca with open appraisal. You clean up beautifully. Luca smiled politely. I'm well-funded. Alessandro's hand pressed once at his back. Approval. Elena's eyes flicked to Alessandro. You're enjoying this. I'm investing, Alessandro replied. Elena leaned closer to Luca. Careful. Men like him don't give without expecting interest. Luca met her gaze, calm and unafraid. Good thing I like high returns. Elena laughed, sharp and delighted. Oh, you're dangerous. Across the room, Marco watched them with a glass in hand, expression unreadable. Luca felt it then. The shift, jealousy. Not Alessandro. Everyone else's. An alpha from a rival syndicate approached. Too smooth, too confident. Moretti, he greeted. Didn't know you were bringing luxury to the table these days. Alessandro's smile didn't reach his eyes. I always have. The man's gaze slid to Luca. And you are. Luca opened his mouth. But Alessandro answered first. Occupied, he said. The word was silk-wrapped steel. The alpha chuckled. A shame. Omegas like you tend to appreciate generosity. Luca tilted his head. You'd be surprised how selective my tastes are. The man bristled. Alessandro stepped closer, voice low. You're done, he said. Before you embarrass yourself. The alpha retreated, smiling tightly, already plotting. Luca exhaled once they were alone again. That was rude, Luca murmured. Alessandro leaned in. That was restraint. They danced later, not because Luca asked, but because Alessandro decided the room needed to see it. Alessandro's hand at Luca's waist was steady, guiding without force. Luca followed easily, letting himself be displayed, claimed by proximity alone. You're enjoying this, Alessandro said quietly as they moved. I'm enjoying being wanted, Luca replied. Alessandro's grip tightened just a fraction. By me? Yes, Luca said softly. Especially by you. Cameras flashed. Somewhere, someone took notes. After the final toast, Alessandro led Luca onto the balcony overlooking the city. Cool night air brushed Luca's skin, grounding him. "You did exactly what I wanted," Alessandro said. Luca smiled. "You paid well." Alessandro's gaze darkened. "Careful." Luca stepped closer, lowering his voice. "What? I thought we were being honest about the arrangement." Alessandro cupped Luca's wrist, thumb brushing the metal cuff. "I spoil you," he said. "I protect you. I give you power by proximity. And?" Luca prompted. "And in return," Alessandro continued, "you let the world see what choosing me looks like." Luca's pulse quickened. "That's not ownership." "No," Alessandro agreed. "That's patronage." Luca leaned in, lips close to Alessandro's ear. "Then spoil me more," Luca whispered. Alessandro laughed softly, dangerous and pleased. "Oh," he said. "I intend to—" Behind them, the city glittered, hungry, watching, waiting. And Luca knew one thing for certain: being adored publicly was intoxicating. But someone, somewhere, was already planning to make him pay for it. Jealousy didn't announce itself. It seeped. Luca felt it the moment he entered the penthouse the night after the gala, thick, heavy, clinging to the air like smoke after a fire. Alessandro was standing by the windows, jacket off, tie loosened, one hand braced against the glass like he was holding the city back by force. "You're pacing," Luca said. Alessandro didn't turn. "You were touched tonight." Luca blinked. "Excuse me?" "3 times," Alessandro continued calmly. "One hand at your elbow, one lingering brush at your wrist, one too close whisper near your neck." Luca's mouth went dry. "You were watching that closely?" Alessandro finally turned. His expression wasn't angry. That was worse. "I was restraining myself," Alessandro said. Luca swallowed. "It was public. Harmless." "No," Alessandro replied. "It was intentional." He crossed the room slowly, stopping a step away from Luca. "They wanted to see how much they could take," Alessandro said. "How much you'd allow." "And?" Luca asked quietly. "And you didn't stop them," Alessandro said. "Which means they'll try again." Luca felt something twist low in his stomach. Heat, nerves, thrill. "You're jealous," Luca said. Alessandro's jaw tightened. "Yes." The admission landed heavy. "That's dangerous," Luca murmured. "I know," Alessandro said. "Which is why you need to understand what it provokes." He reached out, not touching Luca, just close enough for the threat of it to hum between them. "Alphas don't envy," Alessandro said. "They compete." Luca tilted his head. "And you?" "I eliminate variables," Alessandro replied. Luca's pulse jumped. "Including me?" Alessandro's eyes softened. "Just barely." "Never you," he said. "But anyone who believes you're available?" Luca stepped closer, deliberately invading Alessandro's space. "And what if I like being wanted?" Luca asked. Alessandro's control cracked. "Just a hairline fracture." "Then you are playing with something that bites back," he said. Luca smiled. "You warned me." The next day proved Alessandro right. They were at a private lunch. Politicians, financiers, predators dressed as patrons. Luca sat at Alessandro's side, wrist cuff gleaming softly against his glass. That's when Julian Cade arrived. Alpha, young, rich, reckless. He smiled too easily and didn't bother hiding his interest. "So this is Luca," Julian said, sliding into the empty chair across from him without invitation. "You look better in daylight." Alessandro's hand stilled on his cutlery. Luca smiled politely. "That's not a compliment," Julian laughed. "I meant it as one." "You meant it as a test," Alessandro said coldly. Julian shrugged. "Everyone's curious. You've turned an omega into currency." Luca stiffened. Alessandro leaned forward slightly. "Stand up," Julian blinked. "What? Stand," Alessandro repeated, voice low. "Absolute." The table went silent. Julian hesitated, then stood. "Good," Alessandro said. "Now leave before I forget where we are." Julian's eyes flicked to Luca, calculating, irritated. "This isn't over," Julian said. Luca met his gaze calmly. "It is for you." Julian scoffed and walked away. The room exhaled. Later, back in the car, Alessandro was rigid with restraint. "That was excessive," Luca said carefully. "That was mercy," Alessandro replied. Luca studied him. "You don't like sharing attention." Alessandro laughed once. "Dark?" "I don't like imagining your name in someone else's mouth," he said. "I don't like watching people measure how much they can take from you." "And what do you like?" Luca asked. Alessandro looked at him, raw, honest. "I like when you choose me," he said. over and over, publicly. Deliberately. Luca felt his chest tighten. You're afraid, Luca realized. Not of losing control, of losing me. Alessandro didn't deny it. That night, Alessandro bought the building across from the penthouse, just to make a point. When Luca found out, he laughed, breathless, stunned. That's unhinged, Luca said. Alessandro pulled him close, voice low. That's jealousy with resources, he replied. Luca rested his forehead against Alessandro's chest. It's intoxicating, Luca admitted. Alessandro's arms tightened, not trapping, not claiming. Holding. Be careful, Alessandro murmured. People will try to take what I treasure. Luca smiled faintly. Then let them try, he said. I know who I'm going home with. Outside, Julian Cade watched the lights of the Moretti penthouse burn bright, and decided jealousy could be weaponized too. The penthouse door shut with a soft click. That was the loudest sound Luca remembered. The silence afterward was thick, pressed close, heavy with everything they hadn't said in the car, everything Alessandro had swallowed down since the gala. Alessandro didn't touch him at first. He loosened his watch, set it on the table, removed his jacket with deliberate care. Luca stood there, pulse loud in his ears. You're angry, Luca said. Alessandro looked at him. I'm restraining myself. That's worse, Luca murmured. Alessandro crossed the distance between them in 3 slow steps. He stopped close, too close, close enough that Luca could feel the heat of him, the gravity. You let him look at you, Alessandro said quietly. Luca lifted his chin. I didn't stop him. No, Alessandro agreed. You didn't. A pause. Then Alessandro's fingers curled under Luca's chin, tilting his face up, not rough, not gentle. Certain. Tell me why, Alessandro said. Luca's breath hit. Because I wanted to see if you'd lose control. Alessandro laughed softly, dangerously. You're playing a very expensive game, he said. And you keep paying, Luca replied. That did it. Alessandro kissed him. Not sweet, not careful. It was claiming without teeth, dominance without cruelty. Luca melted into it immediately, hands fisting fabric, body responding like it had been waiting all night. Alessandro backed him toward the bedroom without breaking contact. Clothes disappeared in stages, unhurried, intentional. Alessandro took his time like this wasn't urgency, but ownership unfolding exactly as planned. Luca felt exposed in the best way, seen, chosen, undone. Look at me, Alessandro murmured. Luca did. Alessandro's gaze was dark, reverent, hungry. This, Alessandro said quietly, hand steady on Luca's hips, is mine. Tonight Luca swallowed. I know. The bed dipped beneath them. The world narrowed to breath, touch, the way Alessandro guided without asking and Luca followed without hesitation. Every movement was about control and surrender. Not humiliation, not force, devotion. Alessandro pressed his forehead to Luca's. You drive me insane, he whispered. Luca smiled breathlessly. You love it. Yes, Alessandro admitted. I do. The rest was sensation. Heat building, mouths searching, hands learning what they already knew. Luca let himself be taken apart slowly, deliberately, cherished even in the dominance. And when Alessandro finally stilled above him, breath ragged, control hanging by a thread, say my name, Alessandro said. Luca did. Later, much later, Luca lay against Alessandro's chest, skin warm, mind hazy. Alessandro's hand traced lazy patterns along Luca's spine, grounding him. That wasn't just sex, Luca said softly. No, Alessandro agreed. It was reassurance. Luca tilted his head to look up at him. That I'm yours? Alessandro met his gaze, serious. That you chose me, he said. Luca smiled, closing his eyes. Outside, the city kept breathing. And somewhere far away, jealousy was turning into something much worse. Luca woke up wrapped in silk sheets and consequences. Sunlight spilled through the floor-to-ceiling windows, catching on the faint marks at his throat. Nothing obvious, nothing anyone else would notice, unless they were looking too closely. Alessandro was already awake. He sat at the edge of the bed, shirtless, sleeves of his tattoos catching the light as he checked his phone with infuriating calm. You're staring, Alessandro said without looking up. I'm assessing damages, Luca replied, voice rough. Alessandro glanced back, eyes dragging over Luca slowly, deliberately. Still standing, he said. Good, Luca scoffed. You're insufferable after you get what you want. Alessandro set the phone down and turned fully. "No," he said. "I'm honest. That made Luca sit up." "You didn't just sleep with me," Luca said. "You made a point." "Yes," Alessandro agreed easily. Luca's pulse jumped. "To who?" "To everyone," Alessandro said, "including you." Luca swung his legs over the side of the bed, silk sheets slipping down his skin. "You think last night means you own me?" Alessandro stood. He crossed the room slowly, stopping between Luca's knees. He didn't touch him, just close enough for Luca to feel how intentional the distance was. "I think," Alessandro said, voice low, "that you enjoy being kept." Luca's breath hitched despite himself. "I think," Alessandro continued, "you like knowing I can ruin anyone who looks at you wrong." "That's twisted," Luca said weakly. "And yet," Alessandro murmured, "you didn't say stop." Luca swallowed. "I like the security." Luca admitted the money, the protection. Alessandro's hand came up, thumb brushing just under Luca's jaw, lifting his chin, and the attention, Alessandro added. Luca met his gaze. "Especially the attention." Alessandro smiled, slow, dangerous. "Good," he said, "because I'm not subtle when I'm jealous." The rest of the day proved that. A delivery arrived. Custom clothing, shoes Luca hadn't ordered, a watch worth more than his old apartment. A contract followed. Not binding, just tempting. "An allowance," Alessandro said casually, handing it to him. "No obligations listed." Luca skimmed it, heart pounding. "This is obscene." Alessandro leaned against the counter. "You looked obscene last night." Luca glared. "You're doing this on purpose." "Yes," Alessandro said. "I want people to know you're expensive." "And dependent?" Luca snapped. Alessandro's gaze sharpened. "And protected." A notification buzzed on Luca's phone. A message. "Unknown, you wear his money well. Let's see how long he keeps you." Luca's stomach dropped. Alessandro noticed immediately. "Who?" Alessandro asked. Luca handed him the phone. Alessandro's expression didn't change, but the air did. "Julian," Alessandro said quietly. Luca crossed his arms. "This is getting messy." "Yes," Alessandro agreed. "And you're standing in the middle of it wearing my name." Luca hesitated. "Do you like that?" Alessandro stepped close again, voice near Luca's ear. "I like knowing that, when they think of touching you," he said, "they remember what it would cost." Luca shivered. "That shouldn't turn me on," Luca whispered. Alessandro smiled against his skin. And yet, the message buzzed again. "Unknown. Enjoy your leash while it's gold." Alessandro took the phone from Luca's hand and turned it off. "You're not prey," Alessandro said firmly. "You're leverage." Luca looked up at him. "And you?" Alessandro met his gaze, unflinching. "I'm the reason no one dares collect." Luca leaned back against the counter, heart racing. "This arrangement," Luca said, "it's getting dangerous." Alessandro's hand settled at Luca's hip, possessive, unapologetic. "It always was," he said. "That's why it's exciting." Luca laughed breathlessly. "God," he said, "you're going to ruin me." Alessandro brushed his lips just shy of Luca's. "I already am," he replied. Outside, enemies watched. Inside, Luca realized something terrifying and intoxicating. He wasn't just being spoiled anymore. He was being claimed. The first sign wasn't nausea. It was Alessandro canceling a meeting because Luca looked tired. That never happened. "You're hovering," Luca muttered from the kitchen island, staring at the untouched coffee Alessandro had confiscated. "You're pale," Alessandro replied calmly. "And you didn't finish breakfast." "I'm not fragile." Alessandro slid a small velvet box across the counter. Luca frowned. "If that's jewelry, I swear." "It's a test," Alessandro said. Luca froze. "Oh, what kind of test?" Alessandro's gaze didn't waver. "The kind Omegas take when their scent changes." The room went very quiet. Luca stared at the box like it might bite him. "That's ridiculous." "You've been warm," Alessandro said, distracted. "Your suppressant levels dropped on their own." Luca swallowed. "That doesn't mean—" "Take it," Alessandro said gently, not commanding. "Careful." Luca did. The minutes stretched. Luca sat on the edge of the marble counter, heart hammering, while Alessandro stood a respectful distance away, hands clasped behind his back like this was a negotiation, not fate. When the indicator finally flashed, Luca laughed. Once, sharp, disbelieving. "Oh my God," he whispered. Alessandro exhaled slowly, like he'd been holding his breath for weeks. "You're sure?" Luca asked, voice shaking. Alessandro crossed the room and took Luca's hands, steady, grounding. Yes, he said. You're carrying. Luca's knees nearly gave out. Alessandro caught him immediately, pulling him close, not crushing, not claiming, supporting. This wasn't planned, Luca said, panic creeping in. This wasn't. It's not a problem, Alessandro interrupted. Luca looked up sharply. Don't say that like it's a business expense. Alessandro cupped Luca's face with both hands, eyes fierce. I say it like it's a privilege, he said. Mine, that word again. Mine. Luca's throat tightened. This changes everything. Yes, Alessandro agreed. Which means you're no longer negotiating from a position of uncertainty. Luca blinked. What does that mean? Alessandro kissed Luca's forehead, a rare, intimate gesture. It means, Alessandro said, you're not just being spoiled anymore. He gestured toward the windows, the city spread out beneath them. You're being secured. The sugar daddy shift was immediate and terrifying. A private doctor arrived that afternoon, a nutritionist by evening. Luca's old apartment lease was terminated, paid out without discussion. You can't just reorganize my life, Luca protested as Alessandro handed him a black card. I can, Alessandro replied, and I am. Luca stared at it. This is obscene. That, Alessandro said calmly, is prenatal care. Luca laughed weakly. You're enjoying this. Alessandro's hand settled possessively at Luca's lower back. I enjoy taking care of what's mine, he said, and what's growing inside. That night, Luca lay against Alessandro's chest, fingers resting unconsciously over his stomach. I'm scared, Luca admitted. Alessandro's voice was low and certain. No one will touch you, he said. No one will threaten you. You'll want for nothing. And what do you want? Luca asked softly. Alessandro pressed a kiss to Luca's temple. Loyalty, he said. Honesty. And for you to let me be the monster between you and the world. Luca closed his eyes. You already are, he murmured. Outside, Julian Cade read the leaked medical rumor with a slow, ugly smile. An Omega carrying an heir? That wasn't just leverage, that was war. The leak didn't come from the press. It came from the stock market. Luca was half asleep when Alessandro's phone started vibrating non-stop, not ringing, buzzing, message after message, alerts stacking like gunshots. Alessandro was already out of bed. By the time Luca pushed himself upright, Alessandro was dressed, jaw set, eyes cold in a way Luca had only seen once before, right before someone disappeared from polite society. What happened? Luca asked. Alessandro didn't answer immediately. He walked to the window, scanned the city, then turned. They know, he said. Luca's hand instinctively went to his stomach. Know what? That you're pregnant, Alessandro replied. And that the child is mine. Luca felt the blood drain from his face. That was private. It was valuable, Alessandro corrected. Which makes it public. He crossed the room and knelt in front of Luca, gripping Luca's knees firmly, grounding him. Listen to me, Alessandro said. This does not make you weak. It makes you untouchable. Luca swallowed. That's not how this world works. Alessandro smiled thinly. It is now. By noon, the city was buzzing. Not headlines, whispers, investors backing off competitors, syndicates suddenly hesitant, allies reaching out with congratulations thinly veiled as calculations. An heir changed everything. Julian Cade made his move at 2:17 p.m. A message appeared on Luca's tablet, forwarded without comment. Julian, congratulations. Omegas don't usually get this lucky. Hope you know what happens when leverage breathes. Luca's hands shook. He's threatening the baby, Luca said. Alessandro's eyes went black. No, Alessandro said calmly. He's threatening himself. Within the hour, Alessandro locked the penthouse down. Guards doubled. Routes changed. Luca wasn't allowed near windows. You're treating me like contraband, Luca snapped. Alessandro cupped Luca's face, unflinching. I am treating you like a future, he said, which means I don't take risks. Luca's anger faltered. What are you going to do? Alessandro kissed Luca's knuckles, slow, deliberate. I'm going to remind the city, he said, why my bloodline is not something you bargain with. That evening, a rival fund tied to Julian Cade collapsed. By morning, 2 of his allies were under federal investigation. By afternoon, Julian himself was missing. Luca stared at the news feed, heart pounding. I didn't touch him, Alessandro said, pouring Luca a glass of water. I removed the ground beneath his feet. That's worse, Luca whispered. Alessandro crouched in front of him again, softer this time. This is the world you stepped into, Alessandro said, "And this is the shield I put around you." Luca searched his face. "Do you ever worry I'll leave?" Alessandro paused. Then, "Honestly, yes." Luca blinked. "That's why I give you choice," Alessandro continued. "Money, safety, devotion, never chains." Luca laughed weakly. "You call this choice?" Alessandro's hand rested over Luca's stomach, reverent. "You could walk away," he said. "But you won't." "Why?" Luca asked. Alessandro met his gaze. "Because you want this child to grow up feared by no one," he said, "and protected by everyone." Luca's eyes burned. Later that night, Luca lay awake while Alessandro slept beside him, one arm heavy around Luca's waist. The city had gone quiet, too quiet. Somewhere out there, enemies were recalculating, allies were bowing, and Luca, once an accident, once a mistake, had become the most dangerous secret in the city, not because he was fragile, but because he was carrying a legacy. The first thing Luca did was ask to leave the penthouse, not forever, just publicly. Alessandro stared at him like Luca had asked to bleed in the streets. "No," Alessandro said flatly. Luca didn't raise his voice, didn't argue. He just met Alessandro's gaze, steady and unafraid. "You said I had choices," Luca replied. "This is one." Silence stretched between them. Finally, Alessandro exhaled slowly. "Where?" he asked. Luca smiled faintly. "Somewhere everyone can see me standing beside you, not behind you. That changed everything." The charity gala announcement hit the city within hours. Alessandro Moretti to attend with his partner. Not asset, not companion. Partner. The word rattled cages. The night of the gala, Luca wore no cuff. Just Alessandro's coat draped over his shoulders as they stepped into the light together. Whispers erupted, but Luca didn't flinch. Alessandro leaned in. "You're shaking." "I'm not scared," Luca murmured. "I'm deciding." They moved through the crowd as equals. When people addressed Alessandro, Luca stayed. When they addressed Luca, Alessandro listened. That alone unsettled half the room. A familiar face approached. Elena Rossi, sharp-eyed as ever. "Well," she said, eyeing Luca's stomach knowingly. "Looks like the accident learned to walk." Luca smiled calmly. "Looks like the city learned to watch its mouth." Elena laughed. "I like you." "Good," Alessandro said. "So do I." Later, on the balcony again, city glowing below, Luca finally said it. "I don't want to be kept," Luca said. "Not with money, not with fear." Alessandro nodded. "I know, I want you," Luca continued. "Not the shield, not the name, you." Alessandro turned fully toward him, eyes stripped bare. "And if I can't love gently?" he asked. "If I only know how to love like a weapon?" Luca reached for his hand. "Then we learn," Luca said. "Together." "Or not at all." Alessandro closed his eyes briefly, then, quietly, sincerely, he said the thing no one expected from him. "Stay," Alessandro said. "Not because you're protected. Because you choose me." Luca smiled, eyes warm. "I already have," he replied. Across the city, the last of Julian Cade's holdings were absorbed. No drama, no blood. Just silence where threat used to be. The war ended not with violence, but with consolidation. That night, Luca lay beside Alessandro, fingers laced, no contracts between them. "Do you still feel owned?" Alessandro asked softly. Luca thought about it. "No," Luca said. "I feel anchored." Alessandro kissed his knuckles, reverent. "Good," he said, "because the rest of the world is going to kneel." Luca laughed quietly. "Let them," he said. "We're done proving anything." Outside, the city adjusted. Inside, the story was finally slowing down, ready to end not in fire, but in choice. Labor didn't arrive dramatically, no screaming alarms, no chaos. It came quietly, insistently at 4 a.m. while the city slept and the penthouse lights were low. Luca woke with a sharp inhale, one hand already on his stomach. "Alessandro," he whispered. Alessandro was awake instantly. He didn't panic. He didn't rush. He simply moved, pressing the call button, pulling Luca gently upright, grounding him with calm hands and steadier breathing. "It's time," Luca said, voice shaking. Alessandro cupped Luca's face, forehead resting against his. "I'm here," he said. "I'm not leaving." The private medical wing was silent except for Luca's breathing and Alessandro's voice. Low, constant, unbreakable. Hours blurred together. Pain came in waves. Luca cried once, Only once, tears slipping free when the fear spiked too high. Alessandro wiped them away with his thumb like it was sacred work. "You're doing this," Alessandro murmured. "You're incredible." Luca laughed weakly. "You're not allowed to be poetic right now." Alessandro smiled, eyes shining. "I'm not allowed to look away." When the moment finally came, the world narrowed to breath and pressure, and Alessandro's hands locked tightly around Luca's. And then, a cry, small, sharp, alive. The room stilled. Luca sobbed. Alessandro didn't. He went utterly still, like the axis of his world had shifted, and he was learning how to stand again. The doctor smiled. "You have a son." The baby was placed in Luca's arms, warm and perfect and impossibly real. Luca looked down, trembling. "Hi," he whispered. "We made it." Alessandro reached out slowly, reverently, as if touching something holy. The baby curled tiny fingers around Alessandro's thumb. Alessandro inhaled sharply. "That's it," Luca murmured, exhausted and smiling. "You're done for—" Alessandro nodded once, eyes wet and unashamed. "Yes," he said. "I am, later, quiet, private, wrapped in soft light." Alessandro sat beside Luca's bed, their son sleeping between them. "I was afraid," Alessandro admitted quietly, "that I'd only know how to protect with violence." Luca rested his head against Alessandro's shoulder. "You learned," Luca said. "You stayed." Alessandro kissed Luca's hair. "Thank you," he said. "Not as a king, not as a protector, but as a man." Outside, the city adjusted once more, because the heir had arrived, not born into chaos, but into choice, devotion, and a future no one would dare threaten. Epilogue. The city still feared Alessandro Moretti. That never changed. What changed was the way it watched him now. Carefully, respectfully, with an understanding that there were lines no one crossed anymore. Because Luca existed, because their son did. The penthouse was quieter these days, softer. Toys scattered where guns once lay hidden, security still tight, but the air had shifted. Less war room, more home. Luca stood by the window one afternoon, their son balanced on his hip, sunlight catching in his hair. "Careful," Luca murmured. "You're going to inherit your father's dramatic pauses." Alessandro looked up from the couch, one eyebrow raised. "He already has my grip." The baby babbled, clutching Alessandro's finger like a promise. Luca smiled. Life hadn't become simple, it had become intentional. There were still dinners with sharks in tailored suits, still negotiations that reshaped neighborhoods, still power traded quietly over wine. But Luca sat at the table now, not displayed, not guarded, included. When people spoke to Alessandro, they acknowledged Luca. When they spoke to Luca, Alessandro listened. That alone had rewritten the city's rules. Later that night, Luca found Alessandro on the balcony, city lights glowing beneath them. "You ever think about how this started?" Luca asked. Alessandro smiled faintly. "With a mistake." "With a nude," Luca corrected, laughing. Alessandro pulled him close, pressing a kiss to Luca's temple with courage. Alessandro said, "You didn't flinch." "And you?" Luca asked softly. "I learned," Alessandro replied, "that love isn't leverage, it's surrender." Luca leaned into him, content. They never married, no spectacle, no vows under watchful eyes. They didn't need witnesses. The commitment lived in small things, shared looks across crowded rooms. Alessandro adjusting Luca's coat without thinking, Luca grounding Alessandro with a hand at his wrist when the world pushed too hard. And in the child asleep down the hall, breathing softly, safe. Once, Elena Rossi said it best over drinks. "You didn't just tame him," she said to Luca. "You gave him something worth protecting more than power." Luca smiled. "I didn't mean to," he said. "I just sent the wrong photo." The city laughed. History rewrote itself. And the story that began with an accident ended with a dynasty built not on fear, but on choice, devotion, and a love expensive enough to change everything. The end. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. If you loved it, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon for more amazing content. Drop a comment with your favorite moment, and I'll see you in the next one.